After listening to it, his face turned angry, and he cursed at the system in his heart. Hanju shouted in the canyon, "I clearly remember that this function didn't exist before." The system heard him curse and immediately responded, leaving him with nothing to say. Meanwhile, on a cliff, a figure stood there. The person opposite waved a weapon and charged quickly at him, shouting loudly, "Su-Chi, you monster." Everyone's faces were filled with viciousness, and their curses kept coming, all directed at one person. Su-Chi was covered in wounds and softly said, "If you want to frame me, how could there be no reason?" He defended himself, "I'm just saying, I've never killed anyone, all these treasures I found. If you want them, come take them yourself." Hearing these words, the others angrily charged forward. They quickly lunged at Su-Chi, "Evil beast, accept my strike to avenge the sect leader." But their power was easily avoided by him. Su-Chi's gaze darkened, and he scoffed, "Do you think this is my limit?" They froze for a moment after hearing that, each showing a cautious expression. The group immediately stepped back, warning each other to be cautious. Su-Chi's face unconsciously became terrifying. "Let me show you my final move." The boy tilted his head and quickly shouted loudly for his master to come and rescue him. But the response he got was an indescribable silence, and the atmosphere became a bit awkward. The boy scratched his head and gave a thumbs up. "Sorry, master went to the bathroom, wait a moment." On the other hand, Hanju was still immersed in the system, muttering to himself, "Set it to only view friends of special interest." The friends circle became much quieter afterwards. The system displayed a series of information on the screen, and Hanju thought, with things outside being like this, isn't it better to cultivate at home? At this moment, a new notification from the system rang, catching his attention. The notification showed, "Your disciple, Tua-Chi, is being hunted down by the 7 major sects together." Hanju was stunned after reading it and sighed inwardly, which sect is so lucky? Tua-Chi kept shouting in despair, asking Hanju to come and save him quickly. The people below watched this scene, frozen, standing still. One of them spoke up, "Elder, should we go up?" Another person cupped his fists and saluted Tua-Chi, "I am an elder from the Tongdi sect. If my friend is here, why not come out and meet?" The boy trembled all over, sweat pouring down, thinking inwardly, "It's over. Could it be that master is not here because of something urgent?" Suddenly, a man noticed the change in Tua-Chi's expression and immediately interrupted his words. He angrily ordered his subordinates to charge up and capture Tua-Chi. Tua-Chi stood there awkwardly begging for mercy. Knocked to the ground, Tua-Chi shouted, "You guys are quick to act, but master must be busy with something urgent." Suddenly, many bolts of lightning appeared in the space. Seeing this, they immediately panicked and retreated. One person spoke up, attracting everyone's attention. At this moment, the sky became dark with thick clouds, and thunder roared. Everyone exclaimed in surprise, "What's going on?" The weather wasn't like this just now. Blood-red lightning continued to strike down. Tua-Chi widened his eyes, looking at the sky, thinking inwardly, "Master has come." Strong lightning fell from the sky, directly striking those people. The sky was illuminated by the light of the lightning, and the surroundings were unclear. Tua-Chi saw this scene and immediately spread his arms, loudly thanking Hanju. Another 18 years passed, time flew by like a passing horse. The two stood facing each other, and Hanju said to the other, "You've been in the sect for 18 years. His face was indifferent, saying, "Today I will test your swordsmanship." Su Chang'an cupped his fists and bowed, his face full of respect, "Master's teachings, I have learned them all." After hearing this, Hanju nodded approvingly and said, "Good, let me see what level you've reached." The man's gaze suddenly became dangerous, and he immediately drew his sword from its sheath. Sun Chang'an raised the sword in front of him, both hands forming the gesture for chanting a spell, the Heartless Sword Technique. He swung the sword, performing the sword technique he had painstakingly trained in. The deeper the emotion, the sharper the sword. Every sword strike in Sun Chang'an's hand became agile and effortless. He leaped into the air, the sword tip pointing ahead, the sword becoming void of desire, emotion, and attachment, with a clear mind and a void body. But he suddenly thought of Xiaomei, and tears welled up again. Why can't I forget Xiaomei? Is it really possible to master the Heartless Sword Technique? Just letting go of desires is harder than reaching the heavens. Sun Chang'an immediately rejected his thoughts, quickly swinging his sword, the tip aimed at his opponent. Form is emptiness, cut the heart and make it pure. At that moment, the sword tip was gently held in place by a soft force, supported only by 2 fingers. This left Sun Chang'an greatly surprised, staring in shock. Standing opposite, Xing Hongchuan spoke, ignoring Han Ju's astonished gaze. Your sword technique is good, but your cultivation is a bit lacking. After hearing this, Sun Chang'an lowered his head, full of disappointment. My sword technique is so easily blocked, I guess I'm still not good enough. He turned away dejectedly, looking at Han Ju with a confused expression. Am I still unable to see through love? Han Ju placed his hand on his forehead, sighed, and introduced Xing Hongchuan. Let me introduce you, this is your master's wife. Sun Chang'an became stiff upon hearing this and was speechless. Seeing their intimate scene only made him feel more miserable. Sun Chang'an couldn't help but wonder in his heart. Is the heartless sword technique my master taught me fake? Could you really be the world's #1 cultivator? Inside the cave, Xing Hongchuan's voice kept echoing, Husband, this is a divine technique I found for you. She excitedly hung on Han Ju, asking, How is it? This great opportunity, isn't it worth it? Han Ju read while thinking, it's indeed quite good. Her cultivation has already reached the 8th layer of the golden core stage. Han Ju glanced at her behind him. It's thoughtful, but I already have divine techniques. I don't really need these things. Xing Hongchuan pouted. All right then, I still have this to show you. She took out a strange-looking fruit. This is a rare fruit I found in the ancient secret realm. Eating it can increase vitality and physical strength. After eating one, I could crush a hill with one punch. Xing Hongchuan handed him many of these fruits, chattering non-stop, Husband, feel free to eat. I still have plenty. But Han Ju only noticed where she was hiding things and secretly thought, does she really not have any pockets in her clothes? Han Ju thought lightly, this girl always thinks of herself, I can't keep rejecting her. At this moment, she gently leaned close to Han Ju's ear and whispered, I heard someone named Emoju came to find you earlier. Han Ju's face turned pale as soon as he heard this, devoid of color. He was about to speak to explain but was stopped by the delicate hand resting on his chest. Xing Hongchuan pressed Han Ju onto the table, her face darkened but still smiling, we'll talk about this later. Her eyes became somewhat perverse as she licked her lips. Sometimes, it's necessary to strike first. She gently climbed onto the bed, their clothes scattered on the floor, and at the same time, Han Ju's pleas and Xing Hongchuan's tempting calls could be heard. A few days had passed since that day, and a pair of furry legs walked towards the cave, beginning to call for him. Li Changzi hurriedly reported, the Shuayan Heavenly Gates cultivation world of the Great Way has found a powerful guest elder from somewhere, claiming to want to unify the surrounding cultivation worlds. Han Ju was exhausted at this moment, his weak body resembling that of a drug addict. After a passionate night with the two of them, he was drained, muddled, and murmured a few words, destroy, I'm tired. Meanwhile, Xing Hongchuan was still sound asleep beside him. The sun rose, its light shining on Han Ju's cave, and his voice rang out, what did you just say about the Shuayan Heavenly Gate? Han Ju frowned and complained, it's been restless so soon. Li Changzi explained uneasily, the Great Way cultivation world nearby has already been unified by the Shuayan Heavenly Gate, and they are preparing to attack the Great Yen, with the main target being the Yuling sect. He lightly furrowed his brow and then asked, is the Shuayan Heavenly Gate strong? The person answered anxiously, the issue isn't whether it's strong, but that they have a powerful guest elder, at least someone in the merging void realm. Upon hearing the merging void realm, Han Ju wasn't worried, I'm only afraid they have someone in the core formation realm. Hearing this, Li Changzi replied, it's possible. If not, they couldn't have unified the Great Way cultivation world so quickly. Elder Han, are you planning to run away? He gestured with 2 fingers, and Han Ju felt like he had hit the mark. Hesitant, he said, it depends. If they're at the doorstep tomorrow, I might run. Li Changzi immediately clarified, it'll take at least a few decades for them to reach here, I'm just informing you in advance. However, Hanju was still uneasy. It might even be in 10 years, and whether I can reach the core formation realm is uncertain. He hurriedly comforted, I believe in your potential. After hearing that, Hanju accepted it for the moment but asked another question. Hanju stared at him, why do cultivators still fight over territory like mortals? Li Chengzi awkwardly explained, the more cultivation worlds you control, the more cultivation resources you can obtain. The higher your cultivation, the greater your ambition. With that, he suddenly changed the subject. Has there been any news from the elder's disciple? Hanju immediately thought of Yang Tiandong's face, speaking of which, since the cultivation tournament, he's been missing for years. Li Chengzi seemed a bit troubled. We found him, but he said he's now a demon king, living well and doesn't plan to return for now. I'm worried he'll end up like Zhou Fan and Mo Fuzhou. Unlike his concern, Hanju seemed very relaxed. Let him choose for himself, it's up to him. Hearing this, Li Chengzi mentioned the demon dog he raised, but Hanju still didn't care. Let it learn to be a dog, it'll come back obediently someday. This time, Li Chengzi could only sigh. As expected, it's you. After that, Li Chengzi took his leave, preparing to deal with the Shuayan Heavenly Gate issue. Hanju turned around and waved, don't get beaten again. Soon after, Hanju saw a warm message left by Xing Hongchuan, husband is busy with affairs, next time I will enjoy the pleasures of life with you. After reading it, Hanju angrily cursed in his heart, that old man messed up my big plans. Hanju picked up the note and carefully looked at its contents, pleasures of life, mutual compliment. The Sanqing Juying sword is a top-tier offensive spell, the strongest single-target attack with a high success rate for kills. The Wanjian Divine Sect can summon sword shadows, with a long history, a large attack range, but the lethality of its targets remains relatively weak. Suddenly, he came up with an idea, what if I combine the two and complement each other's weaknesses? With this thought, Hanju slightly narrowed his eyes, in that case, why not unlock my own sword path divine power? After a while, at the Jinwu sect in Xiyuan continent, in a building on a hillside. In that spacious room, it was completely empty, with only one person sitting cross-legged in the center, meditating. The person was Huang Jihao, with his eyes closed, fully focused. Suddenly, the door was pulled open, sunlight poured in, illuminating the room, and a voice calling Huang Jihao was heard from inside. Shang Wanqiujian walked in and asked him, have you figured it out? Huang Jihao still had his eyes closed. Losing to you doesn't mean my sword path is weak. Give me 100 years, and I will defeat you. Zhou Xian's sword sect has helped me, they taught me, and I will never betray the sect, not even if I die, he said, then opened his eyes, revealing a cold look. Hearing this, Shang Wanqiujian's face darkened as he tempted, if you are willing to stay, I guarantee you can become the #1 sword cultivator in the world and even become a sword immortal. You have a natural sword heart, staying in Zhou Xian's sword sect is just a waste. Once you become a sword immortal, being with Zhou Xian's sword sect will only be an honor. Huang Jihao's face darkened immediately. Is my sword path talent really invincible? Hearing his affirmation, Huang Jihao sneered, standing up, but I've encountered geniuses with sword path talent even more monstrous than yours. They are stronger than you. Shangguan sneered derisively, humph, mocking, did you encounter them in your remote great immortal country? Don't joke. There's no sword cultivator stronger than me in the great immortal country. Huang Jihao replied dismissively, have you heard of the god-slaying elder from the Yuqing sect? His strength is unfathomable. Able to match the void realm of high-level cultivators. Even Gue Yuan from the Jiolong sect was forced to retreat. He spat out coldly, Gue Yuan's talent was never great. In order to get resources, he even worked for others, losing face in the void realm. For us void realm cultivators, beating him is nothing. Suddenly, Shangguan's sword also trembled violently, as if it was about to fly out of its sheath. Huang Jihao also faced a similar situation, with the sword at his waist reacting the same way. The two quickly raised their hands to steady their swords. Shangguan Chujian spoke first, what's happening? Why is the sword flying out? He then asked in confusion, is it a bomb? As soon as he finished speaking, Shangguan rushed out, it's not a bomb. The two rushed out of the room, and the courtyard outside was in chaos. with everyone seeing their swords suddenly flying into the sky, causing panic. Looking at the scene in the sky, they were startled. Countless swords seemed to be attracted by some force, flying towards the sky. Shangguan and Huang Jihao were too shocked to speak. Suddenly, he thought of something, his eyes widened in disbelief, and he whispered, 10,000 swords bowing. The sword spirits made a sound, this is. All the swords suddenly changed direction, flying horizontally, then charging forward. They flew rapidly through the air, heading towards a specific place. This is the Eternal Sword Path. Meanwhile, in a cave, with a familiar slogan engraved. Hanju lowered his head, silently sitting cross-legged inside. Suddenly, he lifted his head, revealing a determined gaze, with a deadly glint in his eyes. Huang Jihao watched as countless shimmering swords flew across the sky, and blurted out 2 words, Dian. He wondered, I don't understand why it's called the Eternal Sword Path. Qiu Jian immediately explained, it's a sword path divine power realm that's rarely seen in 1,000 years. A strange excitement appeared on his face, I never expected such a genius to appear today. After hearing Qiujian's explanation, Huang Jihao instinctively thought of Hanju's figure. Unless it's him. Suddenly, he asked in a low voice, if I join the Jinwu sect, what kind of divine power could I cultivate? Shangguan Qiujian frowned and replied, with your talent, you may not be able to reach that realm. After saying that, he broke into a cold sweat, thinking, you really dared to consider giving up. Anyway, this is a kind lie. Suddenly, a figure streaked across the sky like lightning. A person fell from the sky and landed in front of them with a thud, startling both Shangguan Qiujian and Huang Jihao. The person widened their eyes, their bloodshot eyes glaring as they shouted, who has comprehended the Eternal Sword Path? The disheveled elder spread his arms and yelled at the sky, I have meditated for 3,000 years with a natural sword heart, yet failed. Why? The heavens are truly unjust. Seeing this scene, the 2 on the side seemed to be petrified. Huang Jihao sweated as he recalled, did you just say my natural sword heart isn't at that level? Qiujian immediately denied it. At that moment, a terrified shout suddenly echoed from the Yuqing sect. Everyone started to panic, as several swords suddenly flew into the sky. Some realized in fear that they were heading toward nearby mountain peaks. On the mountain, Hanju muttered irritably, it's barely morning, and it's already this noisy, disturbing me from comprehending divine powers. Is there no humanity? As he spoke, he angrily walked out of his cave, and Black-Eyed Chicken and Zun Cheng'an, seeing their master finally appear, were immediately moved to tears. When Hanju looked up at the sky and saw countless swords flying toward him, he was stunned, surprised as he asked, what's going on? The 2 immediately rushed forward, urgently saying, powerful experts are coming, we need to run. In contrast to their frantic actions, Hanju simply spread his hands in confusion. A bright halo appeared on Hanju's palm. Why does it feel like these swords are subpoenas? Unless I'm the one who did this. He thought, then tried to recite the retrieval command. The halo immediately shrank. After a moment, the light in the sky slowly began to fade. The light surrounding the swords immediately extinguished, and they began to wobble in the air. In the next second, countless swords suddenly dropped straight down to the ground around Hanju. Seeing this scene, Black-Eyed Chicken and Zun Cheng'an couldn't help but exclaim, as expected of our master, his actions are truly extraordinary, resolving the danger. At this moment, the system suddenly popped up a notification, indicating that he had comprehended the Eternal Extreme Sword Path Divine Power. Hanju was surprised to find that the divine power even had different levels. He raised his hand and stroked his chin, pursing his lips while thinking about the name of this divine power. Not long after, Hanju named it 3 clear pearls, and the system immediately confirmed it. Additionally, because he was the first to comprehend it, he could choose to enhance his luck. Hanju decided to choose humble cultivation and received a spiritual treasure. On the other side, Black-Eyed Chicken and Zun Cheng'an saw him remain motionless for a long time and couldn't help but wonder, could it be that his magical power backfired? As soon as the words were spoken, Hanju's entire body suddenly flickered with a beam of light, causing them to scream, my dog's eyes. This time, he received a 3rd-grade defensive spiritual treasure, the Yellow Earth King Spirit Protection Cloth, which could automatically resist and attack.